Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I'm just so honored to be here with my good friend, Dr. Joye Pugh. Dr. Joy, are you there, sister?
Yes, Ian. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. I had a awesome day. Diane came down so we could, Diane and Denny Cover came down so that we could celebrate and honor Sukkot, share a meal, and my children came over, and so we had a really good fellowship, and it was such a beautiful day. It's hard to believe that last year, this same day, it was 97 degrees and just crazy. But I'm glad that this year seems to be more of a norm as far as the temperatures and the weather. But I'm so glad to be here with you, Dr. Joy, and give the listening audience a chance to hear about one of your new releases. And so, if you would, can you just share a website and your contact information, and then tell everybody just a little bit about the special parables of joy?
Okay, my website is www.drjoye, and it's DRJOYE, joy with an E.com. My Facebook page is Joy, Joye. Last name is Pugh, P is in Paul, UGH. And if you just connect to me on Facebook and become one of my friends there, then you can private message me if you have any questions, and you can follow along as to what I'm doing and what's happening in my life, and you can kind of keep up with all the radio shows and guest appearances that I am doing. And I love to have people on Facebook because it seems like I can get a lot of feedback very quick and real time almost. So it's a lot of fun to have people join as Facebook friends with me and follow my work that way, Zen. So I look forward to people who are listening to the show that if you're interested in being a Facebook friend and you're really involved in Facebook, it's a real good way to be able to interact with me on a daily basis or ask questions or, find out what I'm going to be doing and what shows I'm going to be on.
Yes, and also Dr. Joy, like myself, I do an Ask Me Anything show for the public to ask any questions or share any commentary. And she also does a once a month with my daughter-in-law, Joy, also Joy Garcia. And so is it the first or the last Monday?
It's the last Monday of every month, the last Monday, and it's from 8 to 10 Eastern, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to answer a lot of the questions. I know that you have always gotten a lot of questions from the people who follow your work, Zen. And I was always spending like many hours every day getting emails from all over the world about the research that I have done. And I really would not be able to answer a lot of the questions because sometimes the answers were too long to be able to sit there and type. I mean, a lot of the questions I got were things that I actually wrote books about. It took 7 years to put together. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to have Joy really kind of host that for me and ask these questions that people have wanted to, know answers, about. And it gives me the chance to be able to do it in a relaxed setting. And and I'm sure Joy sometimes gets kind of tickled because my questions are so broad. I mean, I touch
Right.
on so many fields of study that I get some very, very interesting and sometimes way out there kind of questions, but I look forward to it. I mean, it's one of those things. I was laughing and I was telling my best friend, I feel like kind of like Dear Abby.
Right,
I
right.
have a problem. Can you fix it for me? But, if I have something that I feel like that God has given me in all the years of research that I've done, or in the counseling and case studies that I have been able to be a part of and help people in their particular walks of life. It makes it nice to be able to share those things. And so many times after we've been on, one of those shows, I get some of the nicest emails back of people who said, I never dreamed that you'd answer that, question for me on the air. or they would be like, it was so nice for you to answer the question because now I can go back and play it over and over again. So lots of times when we're in counseling situations and you tell someone something, unless they write it down and have a really great memory, they don't really remember it maybe exactly the way that you've said it. Where
Right.
when you have it on this YouTube, they can go back and play that answer over and over again. So if they're trying to work on something in their lives, it really gives them a chance to sit down and re-listen to something that I might have said to kind of give them direction. And there's a lot of times that I get a lot of questions of people that are actually said in these emails. They'd say, well, so and so asked this question, but it's something that I've always wanted to know, but I was afraid to ask. And there's always been. We've been in school before and we wanted to ask a question and we might have been a little bit embarrassed. So if somebody else in the front asked your same question, you're always really happy because that was the answer that you were needing. So it's really been a blessing to find out that sometimes when I've answered somebody else's question, it's really given somebody else that never maybe felt comfortable enough coming forward and giving out information about their personal lives. And it's helped them be able to move forward. So I've had double blessings like that. And it's just really wonderful when people send you something and say, thank goodness, that I took the time to ask this question or listen to the show because it's actually changed my life. And, Zen, that's what we're after. We're wanting to do something that makes people understand that they have a significant part to play in the life that they have on this earth.
Right.
So many times people come into this world and they think it's just a grain of sand and they hear science maybe teach them a little bit about being from Darwin's ape tree, and not really feel like that there's a rhyme or reason why we are here. And I think that's the thing that your work and my work as well has been to try to show people that there is a rhyme and a reason, that there is a purpose for all of us.
Yes.
And that if you can find that special purpose and understand it as to what it is, sometimes getting your feet on solid rock and not on shifting sand can really give you a foundation to build on and look back at your life and go, God really was here all along. And it's that's the thing that you and I think we're both trying to do is to try to show people that there is a reason and a rhyme behind everything that's been here. I mean, way back to antediluvian days, there has been all this, information and knowledge and teachings and things of that nature to try to get us on the right path. And so I'm real thankful that Joy gives me the opportunity, and you do too, to do that YouTube show at the end of every month on that Monday night from 8 to 10 to be able to answer questions that I really believe people are struggling. I mean, some of the questions are so in depth. And sometimes, I want to answer a question in like 5 minutes, but it may get into 30 minutes. So it's wonderful that I can do that. I know that it does back the questions up, and I always tell people that contact me, we'll finally get to your question, but it may be a couple of months down the road because I really want to take the time to explain things. Sometimes when we just quickly answer something and we don't give the background or whatever people need to know, they don't get the whole picture of what they need to understand about why they're here and what's going on in their life and how to make a difference and how to feel like they can be loved or have a purpose or whatever. So I appreciate that opportunity. And like I say, at my website, if you go to www.drjoye.com, there's a submission form there. And you can fill that out with a question and send that to me through email. Or if you're a Facebook friend, I get a lot of people who send me questions through private messenger. So both ways, the questions can get to me, and then I'll put them on the list to come up on a future show and be answering those questions live. So it is a wonderful opportunity, and I thank you for it.
It's our great honor to be able to host that for you and to provide a platform for not only you, but also for those that are interested in your work, to be able to interact with you directly and to ask you questions that they, otherwise might not have opportunity to do so. But most importantly, too, it frees you up to be able to, instead of spending hours emailing in response to different individuals, especially if they ask the same questions over and over, which happens quite often. It gives you, a capacity to answer a lot of questions in a 2-hour show, and then to have all that put behind you so that you can focus on your work and the things that you're researching and putting together in book form, which I know for myself that was a great benefit as well. There was
Yes.
simply not enough time in the day even to respond to all the questions and the emails that I was receiving. And so it ended up that I had to neglect certain people and their inquiry. And so these shows and this platform gives us the ability to respond to everybody, which is just a beautiful thing.
Well, it is, and it's so wonderful to have technology that we can use like this to really help us, but also help other people. Because right now, I really feel like, and you know this as well, that our world is very much suffering, and people are really searching for the answers. So if you can get to them, or you can answer questions that do give them some hope in a world that seems very topsy turvy right now, it really does lift people up. And right now, mental health is one of the biggest issues that's going on. People are turning to alcohol and drugs and becoming lawless and everything else. So, I mean, if you can give somebody some hope in these troubling times, then it can kind of maybe keep them out of the grips of Satan and all the things that Satan's bringing to the world right now that might snatch them down a rabbit hole, that we might keep them, floating above the water, head above the water, and not feel like they're drowning in all of this.
Right. And, people really appreciate individuals that are researchers taking the time to answer them and to, share a moment of focus and to put that in their direction. A lot of people are very grateful, because I know a lot of other researchers simply don't have the time and don't respond to a lot of inquiries. And so it's a great blessing to be accessible to the public.
Well, when I sat down to do the Parables of Joy series, and I started with the Parables of Joy on a Georgia farm that I did about a little over a year ago, I really wanted to really help people understand who I was. Lots of times people think somebody that, like what we do, we're celebrities and our lives are just this perfect, born with a silver spoon in your mouth kind of thing going on. And sometimes I think if you can ever get to know the person that you love to hear their research, or you love to read their work, or understand what their work is about, if you can really get to know them on a personal level, sometimes it really brings home that we've had to struggle. Our lives have not been easy. You've had to go through some serious things in your life. I've had to go through some serious things in my life. And sometimes I think that when you, like Paul Harvey used to always say, when you know the rest of the story, right, it kind of gives a oomph kind of to what you're trying to bring to the table as far as research. And really during these days that we're living in, if you know the person and you know where they've been and you know what they've been through, then it's a lot easier to relate to the work that they're talking about than it just being someone that you think may be out there just writing a book and trying to make money off of it. You and I both have such a in-depth desire to really reach people and to really help them save their souls by choosing the right path. And I think that if people understand where we're at in our lives and where we have come from and the challenges that we have faced and the things that we have overcome, that gives other people a chance to attempt greater things in their own lives. And so that was one of the reasons Parables of Joy on a Georgia farm, that first parables book that I wrote in this series, was what it was all about. I mean, it was the intent to let you know who I was and the struggles that I had in my life, and those stories that are there, much like Huckleberry Finn and Mark, and what they were doing back in those days when you would read stories like Huckleberry Finn, you would find that it was funny, but sometimes there were sad stories. And then in my case, these are all true stories. They're with real names, with real people, with real incidences that happen. And so when you can garner that, okay, in my own life, I've had this happen or this happen or this happen, And you can say, well, there's Dr. Joy or Zen or someone else that you know, and you know a story about them, you can relate to them better. And that's why I really felt that God was leading me to put into a book these kinds of stories, because they're quick reads, they're little parables, they're true stories, and they have really a meaning behind them, even deeper, that goes deeper meaning, just like the parables in the Bible do. You can kind of see a surface of a story, but also you get to feel something. You maybe feel the Holy Spirit coming into the story and really helping you get deeper and deeper in things that have happened to you that you can relate to in these stories. So I felt like that book really, really opened a door for people to get to know me. And so it was my greatest desire to be able to follow in that series, to do a special Parables of Joy and do the Triumphs of the Disabled. And so this book that's just come out, Special Parables of Joy, Triumphs of the Disabled, was another way to bring people into an understanding about everybody on this planet, regardless of your mental capability or your physical capability, has a place and a time that God set forth from the moment that you were really conceived in the womb. And that nobody is really greater than anyone else. That in God's eyes, we are all his children, but we all have a different part to play in the bigger picture of humanity. And so this book that, like I said, it's just come out, Special Parables of Joy, Triumphs of the Disabled, was about the years, because I spent 13 years as a mental retardation executive director over a training work activities center. And we had a daycare, we had an outreach program, and we had a residential program where I had built two complexes, one that was an independent living complex and one that was a personal care home, so that I had really a 24/7, 7-day-a-week a facility ongoing. These two projects where people lived, and then as well as the project where people would go and work and do the work activities, and then the outreach program went into the school systems and took care of school-age kids in the afternoons. And then I also had the daycare facility that took care of children from the moment they were born until they went into the school system, which may be like 5 or 6 years of age. So there was this huge number of people that I was constantly working with for a little over 13 years. And before that, when I was in my undergraduate work in college, I had to take on a adaptive physical education program at an adaptive situation in a school that really had some major physically and mentally handicapped young children. And so that set me on the stage really as a college student to understand the benefit of athletics for people who seem to have physical and mental disabilities. And when I took over at Sunnydale years ago, it was my hope to bring that knowledge that I had learned in college to a setting where people were all ages, from, well, I could say from birth to death is what I literally was looking after in terms of ages. And I wanted to develop a program that would allow those people who had typically either been kind of put off to the sidelines of life and told, well, you know, you're handicapped and you really can't do this and you're not really normal and, you know, you fall outside the bell curve of normal. I mean, all these things that people are told if they don't fit into society's perfect mold of normality or what they consider as being normal. And so it was my ultimate desire for my second book in the Parables of Joy sequence of books to be about the disabled, because I really had my entire life challenged and changed by what I had to deal with on a daily basis. And, you know, when you're born into this world and you typically have, you know, your mentality levels is very good and your, you know, ability to learn is good and you physically can do things, then you sometimes don't realize the hardships of people who have had physical limitations, medical limitations, and mental limitations as far as learning and also mental health problems. So I had a couple little things happen to me when I was growing up, and after I was born, I had some physical problems, and so I had always felt a little bit different than my friends, maybe because I could see that they were able to do certain things that physically maybe sometimes I was not able to do, and emotionally maybe I was not able to do for the fear because of my physical limitations that kept me from maybe taking on opportunities that because of fear and anxiety about it. And so when I was put in my undergraduate work in an adaptive physical education program, and I was always a great athlete, able to do about whatever I wanted to physically, and then to come down to people who couldn't literally hold on to a ball, much less throw it, hit it, or run, then it taught me that there is this level that you've got to break things down in skill-wise is to be able to get someone to learn to do something. And it was wonderful because I thought that because I learned so fast and because I was a good athlete that I could not have the patience maybe to try to work with somebody over and over and over repetitiously to finally get a skill down to a certain level that they would be able to build on that skill and get better. And what I found then was that it was amazing that God had really given me this capability because of some of the problems that I had had in my own life, that I could reflect back on how I felt and how I was scared and maybe afraid. And so I applied how I once felt mentally in my mind as I was trying to sit and do with these particular people. And what I found was that, time would just go by. And it didn't matter if it took all day long for somebody to literally be able to finally grab a hold of a ball and just toss it. The thrill of seeing that happen was it was breathtaking to me that somebody had said never will be able to do this, never could potentially have the capability to do it, that no psychological would say they would be able to, no developmental assessment would say, no doctor would be able to say. And when I would just apply this belief that if you are given this opportunity of repetitiousness and that constant ability to go back after it and after it and after it and keep giving someone positive reinforcement, that they could eventually learn to do something that nobody else, not even themselves, thought was possible. Mm-hmm. And so once that started happening, then I began to get all these wonderful, what I will literally call miracles, that began to happen in my life as I put God into every situation. Instead of looking at it like, okay, this is what the assessment says, this is what the psychological says, this is what people that have worked with this person before have put in the documents and whatever in their past histories and in their individualized special plans that we, had to write and do that kind of stuff. I just didn't, I knew because I did psychologicals and I did assessments and I knew, so I can look at a person and know, well, more than likely they will never be able to do this because I had the background in the study and in the knowledge, and that's what I was trained in once I got my degree and my master's. And so when people started seeing me go, look, let's just try this, they would look at me like, are you kidding me? Those people can't do this. Why would you even consider that? They're old and they're decrepit and they're this. I mean, you just can imagine the stories that I heard about why we shouldn't do it. And then, of course, the family members were also nervous because they're like, oh, my 40-year-old person that's been in the family for so-and-so and all they've done is sit, and go to work and come back home on a bus. And I'm like, but I want them to learn that maybe they can shoot a basketball. Maybe they can walk, a mile. Maybe they can run a mile. Maybe they can run 10 miles. Maybe they can play basketball. Maybe they can hit a golf ball. I wanted them to see, let me try to just work with them. And so what I did was I found the perfect person when I started doing this that believed in me. Because when they said, I don't think I can do that, Miss Joy. And I said, well, what if I tell you that I believe you can? And I'm going to work with you every day because I believe you can. I never said I didn't dream that they could not do it. I never put that in my mind, even though I knew the limitations that were there. I just said, okay, we're going to do this. And we're going to do this every day at this time, and I'm going to work with you, which I was very fortunate. I've always been a hands-on person. So here I was running a facility, which most people do the executive thing and never touch the clients or whatever that you're working with. It was my intent on a daily basis to have these one-on-one opportunities with the clients that I served. And the intent was to be able to see, can I change their life? Can I get them to believe that they are more than what society has told them they're capable of? And that there is something within them that transcends anything that's of the physical nature. So, we've all read stories. And of course, when I was growing up, about stories where people would have a child run out in a highway
and menu option.
Get hit by a car, and the parent would have the strength capability and run over and lift the car up. It was unknown capability.
Hold on, Dr. Joy. We're at break. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for the next segment. We appreciate all of you tuning in to live broadcast. I'm joined by my good friend, Dr. Joye Pugh, and we are speaking about one of her newest books, The Special Parables of Joy. Dr. Joye, I'm going to turn it back over to you and allow you to continue with the story.
Yes, I was saying that so many times we have heard stories about people who had a child that ran out in the middle of the highway and was either crushed by a car or pinned by a car, and the parent literally lifted the car off of the child in some kind of miraculous strength and capability. Well, what that's telling us is that we have something within us that far exceeds what our body typically has been believed that it could do or conceived that it could do. And so that was my intent when I started working with people who had these disabilities, was to try to see if I could bring about that spirit within them that would allow them to literally fly higher than they thought they could fly, and as well as what I believed even that they could do. That I wanted to really fool my own self that they could go further than I thought that they could go. So the book really talks about a lot of and they're all first names of the people that I work with, but they're all true stories, and they're all kind of really miraculous under the circumstances of what these individuals had to face and the accomplishments that they actually achieved. And I was just going to read just the chapters, and so you get an idea of what the people were and some of their names and that kind of thing. I start off with Charles, the spirit of Special Olympics; Sandra, who was a burning bush in the wilderness; Benji, a pinwheel in the wind; Johnny's philosophy, never judge a book by its cover; Martha and Bill, a real Caddyshack adventure; Mr. Tom, Santa; Brother Billy, a simple man of fervent prayer; Donna Sue's trick, an unforgettable treat; Joseph Mascolo, Stefano Demera from Days of Our Lives. There's a story in there about him and all the work that he did called A Sweet Tater Blessing that he did for me and the work that I was doing with the Sunnydale Training Center. The War Between the Politics of Good and Evil, Public Law 94-142, The Fight Over Right. And what you find in the book, you'll find stories where you have inspirations, you'll have stories where you'll cry, there's going to be stories where you're going to get really fighting mad to know that there were people that literally tried to stop an opportunity for handicapped people because they were either jealous of what the program was doing for people or the fact that they were not the ones initiating it. And so you will see how many times I was happy, many times I shed a lot of tears, and sometimes, many times I almost lost a lot of blood out of some situations, including a situation where my life was literally threatened. So you get a whole picture of what it's like when you are a person like myself who takes on this drive to believe that you can change the lives of people if they're given the right opportunities. But you will understand what it was like for me to pave a path that had never been through the wilderness that I was fixing to take these people through. And the people that I had to butt heads with in the politics of the world. You know, that's the thing, that when you run a facility, that you not only are looking after these people, you're also dealing with the local community, the state, the national, that kind of thing, that you're having to work or fight against. And you would think that all the people who work in the so-called area of specialness or special ed or handicapped situations and mental health, mental retardation, and substance abuse, that those people would all have a coordinated effort, even Department of Family and Children's Services, that they would all work together to make these people's lives secure and to give them opportunities. But that is not the case. And so this book is really an eye-opener for anybody who believes that that is an easy go to help people that need help, as well as the people who are really relying on somebody to help them because they are literally people without a voice. Many of them, and a lot of the people that I worked with, were either blind, they could not speak, they were deaf and dumb. I mean, there was all these other things that were going on with them that kept them from being able, let's say, to march on the White House and say, I demand, some type of assistance. They were literally voices crying in the wilderness that nobody was listening to. And if somebody didn't take that initiative for them, then they were just pushed aside. They didn't get certain things. They were cut out of budgets when the state put out their budgets to help handicapped people. If somebody else could come along and take that money from the budget, and unfortunately politics can do that, and you might have something that's supposed to be coming down into your area to help, let's say, a new bus to pick up a person that literally can't get up on a bus and needs to have a wheelchair lift, and they turn around and give it to somebody, 2 counties over because they are a bigger facility, or they deserve, or they have somebody that's got, political pull. Many times that's what's happened. It was not what you knew, it was who you knew. So that was a thing that I kept running into, because I've always been the person that it doesn't matter, somebody's socioeconomic status. I wanted the best for my people, regardless of the situation. And of course, I was in a little South Georgia town that had 2 red lights. And so, when you come down past Macon, Georgia, anything below that, Valdosta's kind of gotten bigger now, but during those times that I was working there, it was like a whole different Georgia. There was a Georgia in North Georgia that had accessibility to communication capabilities and transportation and those kind of things. But then there was a place like where I was at, where the only transportation these people had, the county that I worked out of, Irwin County, was literally huge. And they couldn't walk. They couldn't get from place to place. They were stuck wherever they were in that county. If this school bus did not run to pick them up and bring them into the facility, there was no way for them to get there or to get the services that they needed. So it really this book takes on a persona that I don't think a lot of people have thought about what it was like to try to fight against a system that actually was saying, we are so concerned about the handicap out there, and we are trying desperately to meet these guidelines to make their lives better, when in reality it was a facade, and people were shifting money and using money for the wrong reasons. It got so bad in one of the stories that you're going to read about in the Special Parables of Joy, where the school system, where a young man should have been having a capability of going to the school system, they didn't want him there because it's going to mean an extra bus and an extra aid. And they were using that money for the football program, and so that was going to mess up their football program. So, what are we going to do to make this not happen? And so they start using the old timey thing of Masonic blackball. In other words, we go after the family, we go after the family's friends, we kind of, push them aside and threaten them a little bit to kind of get them to back off. All these things, all these little political things that we know happen that most people will talk about in private circles, I kind of bring out full force in this book and tell you exactly some of the terrible, evil things that went on to try to keep me from being able to do what was right for those people. And sometimes you just your mouth will drop open because you just can't believe that people who seem to be the crust of society, the elite of society, who are always saying, well, we care about the handicapped, we want to do the best for our handicapped in our community, and they're standing before, the Lions Club and places like that, and even in churches, and then they're turning around underhandedly and doing something totally different where nobody can see them. And so it's kind of an expose of this is what may have been being said on the forefront, but what was really being done under the table and behind people's backs is now here it is. And, I thought about one time about writing nothing but about the politics of good and evil and just do a book on that. But I wanted to not focus so much on the pain of what I went through. I wanted to show the accomplishment of going through that pain and the people whose lives I touched and made a difference in, how they were able to meet and go so much higher, and how God provided. There's a story in there about golfing. I had 2 Down syndrome people who were older, who were just dedicated athletes. And we were told, they can't remember how to keep score. They'll never be able to pick out what club to use. And when you compete on an international level of Special Olympics or a state level of Special Olympics, you've got to have no different than anybody else, a golf handicap. And that requires playing a lot of golf to establish, a certified handicap in the Professional Golf Association. So when I took that on, you would not believe the people that really fought against me to take people out and practice on a golf course, to practice a skill on a golf course. I mean, you just can't imagine how people could be so cruel. But, God provided another opportunity for them to get a better golf course and a better opportunity. And they both went on and became state championships on the first mainstream golf team for the state of Georgia. They were the state gold medalist. And so, when I look back and I think about the pain, the crying, the anxiety, what I had to go through to get that to happen, in the end result was that if I was willing to sacrifice and give and do whatever I could do, that God would open a door. And he did. Yeah. There were so many times that I would be so down and out, Zen, and think, the door's been closed and what do I do now? That I would just sit and pray. And I talk about this in my book, about those days that I dropped my head down and just really said prayers and what I prayed, to the Lord to please help me with, because he knew my heart. I wasn't doing this to get a pat on my back. I wanted those people to achieve at something they never dreamed they could do, and literally show the world, show other people who are handicapped, as well as people, like I say, who are so-called normal, that we are not living up to our potential. We are not reaching the potential that really exists within us. And like I mentioned earlier, lifting that car off of a child or doing something like that, you find that there is just this great understanding. So when I sat down to do this, on the very back of my book, I'll read exactly what I wrote, because it really tells you about Special Parables of Joy. It's saying that I am revealing my crusade to rescue those which society chose to reject. To take on such a challenge in the 1980s and 90s required strong, dedicated, and compassionate soldiers. While there were many who claimed they cared, if they did not get anything out of helping those who were separated from society, then they quickly extinguished their concern when the going got tough. Thank goodness there were those soldiers, though few, who genuinely were concerned about doing right. They were the ones who went that extra mile, which bore the pain of helping their fellow man, and who with tears in their eyes and bruises all over their bodies still loved every minute of being a suffering servant for the cause of righteousness. Mm-hmm. And that is the thing, that there were people who really walked this path with me, who believed in me. Because when I started doing this and I got so much opposition, there was people that I no doubt God sent to support, give me opportunities to allow me to continue to do what I felt like God had sent me there to do. And so this book, this is what I say, is a tribute to all who marched into battle to dispel so many myths surrounding the mentally and physically handicapped. And together we saw the true victory. We witnessed firsthand that within a broken body is a spirit that, when given the right opportunities, can really fly. And that is so true. I mean, it's like the right opportunities with the right people, with the right mindset, the perfection of that. And I know that we can never have anything in a perfect world, in a fallen world, in a perfect state. But my intent was to get as close to perfect as God would allow me to get there. Mm-hmm. To keep the mindset in such a positive way to be able to take these people further and further and further. And in doing so, you learn in this book how it changed me, how their capabilities literally changed me in my own life, and how I began to have experiences because of their capabilities that gave me opportunities that I never dreamed I would have the opportunity to ever succeed at. One of the things was, when I was an athlete growing up, I always wanted to be a state champion in some sport. And I played basketball, and we won the region, but we didn't win the state. And so when I was playing tennis, I literally had gone my senior year undefeated in singles and doubles. And when I got ready to go to the region tournament and should have been the state championship, I got mononucleosis, was the Epstein-Barr virus. And it almost killed me. I got very, 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 very sick. And so I was unable to play in the tournament. So there was no other way to go back and be a state championship, to be in the state championship, because I graduated at the end of that year and started to college. And so I felt like my opportunity to be a state champion just went right down the tubes. Well, when I started the Special Olympic program with these poor handicapped people that nobody believed could do anything, and they were all kind of in developmental sports and that kind of thing, when I began to build their skills, many of them got into the level of capability of playing with normal athletes. And so Special Olympics offered a level above everything else where you have so many handicap on a team and so many what you would call normal athletes on a team to make up a team. And that was the highest echelon of Special Olympics because it was mainstreaming. Well, I was fortunate enough by working with these people and getting in shape that I began to play and be a part of those games with those people. I would be coaching them and also playing on the team. And so it gave me the chance to win a state championship in golf. And when I stood on the podium with my two athletes as a part of the team and the other person that was there with me that was a part of our team that was a normal athlete, considered normal athlete, I felt, of course, my mother was in the crowd out there, and she knew the many hours that I had practiced all my life to be a state championship in tennis person. And, she's standing out there, and I'm standing on the podium, and I'm crying. Because I'm like, I really never dreamed that I could reach a state championship at the top of the game of everything else and literally get something that says, you're a state champion. And so they gave me that opportunity by me first giving them. It was like what I gave to them, they turned around and I was blessed as well with something that I never dreamed when I started with that it would offer me that same kind of opportunity. So there's parts of this in the book that you see how where I started with something that seemed like everybody would be like, you're just wasting your time. That person can never do this. And then all of a sudden they began to do these great things. I have this one story in there about Sandra, who literally started out and really had, physical limitations and mental limitations. And she just believed what I would tell her. And she was a coach's dream. And she really became, and I call several of them, kind of like the Jonathan Livingston Seagull that I needed to show handicapped people they could literally fly. And so once I could get one or two of them stepping above the rest and kind of soaring into that next level of competition and the next level of training, then they began to soar, and the other seagulls, or clients, seagulls, would be going, well, if Jonathan can fly that high, or if Sandra can fly that high, or Benji can fly that high, Miss Joy, let me try it. And that gave them the secureness that they had seen me support Sandra, they had seen me support Benji and Charles and Johnny and the other people that I write about. And it gave them that secureness to say, I want to try it. And if they fell over and fell on their face, they got up again. It wasn't like I quit because they had seen those other people fall and fall and fall and me pick them up and fall and pick them up and fall. And they saw that they could trust that I was not going to leave them, that I would give them whatever. I would raise whatever money was necessary to give them this opportunity. And so, here's a little town with 2 red lights, and I coached over 25 different sports. I mean, everything from ice skating to snow skiing. In fact, I had one young man, and he's not in the book, but I will tell the story, that he wanted to do Nordic snow skiing. And so I sent a couple of my athletes up to the trials up in Boone, North Carolina to try and see if they could, stay on a pair of skates if they were doing ice skating, and a pair of skis if they were doing alpine or Nordic skiing. Well, this one young man was just absolutely had a little bit of talent in the Nordic skiing ability. So we had two options, and that was to send him twice a year up there for the competitions, and he always did really well. So there came an opportunity, because he had scored really high at one of the games, that he might be a potential candidate to be considered for an international Special Olympic Nordic skier for the United States, competing in Reno, Nevada. For the Special Olympics have an international Special Olympics just like the regular Olympics, and all the countries like China, Russia, Japan, all them come in, and they do the same. So your level of competition is way up there. I mean, even further than most normal athletes. So what I did, Zen, is I took this young man who lived in South Georgia and lived in nothing but sand, and put him on a Nordic track little walking machine. I got one of those and got inline skates, and I trained him on how to do that in snow. So I trained him on the perfection of the skill. He went to Reno, Nevada for the International Special Olympics against 109 countries, I believe it was that was there.
Wow.
And came back with a gold medal and Nordic snow skiing. And everybody was like, here's a little kid from South Georgia that never sees snow, and he's able to go out there. So, like I say, I had so many good opportunities and people who supported me, because it required money. It required raising money to do this. I mean, the government doesn't give you money for that. You had to raise the money to do that with. But the fact that they were able to achieve things that nobody dreamed. I had international Special Olympic kids representing the United States of America from a 2 red light town in some of the top sports, and it was amazing, because we competed, in area, district, state, regional, and then Southeast regional, and then United States, and then Special Olympics for the International Special Olympics. And during that time, I was asked to serve on the Georgia Special Olympic Board of Directors for actually 2 terms, which I really appreciated the opportunity. And then I was asked by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who is the founder of Special Olympics at that time and was the founder of Special Olympics at that time. She asked me to be on an international board that was about improving. It was a advisory task force for children ages 6 to 8, really to improve athletic skills, because what we were seeing and what I was finding from the work that I was doing was that if you could start with children at an early age, as early as they could start throwing a ball. And I had seen that in my adaptive physical education classes that I had done in my undergraduate work, that if I could teach these skills, that the skills of playing ball and grabbing things, running, tossing, working together as teams literally could be fixed into a situation where that could be applied in their regular lives of dealing with other people, working for a common goal, meeting the goals that were being set for them, having the physical capability to do that. And in my doctoral program, I took on as my thesis and my dissertation, my applied research project was really to do a major research applied project called Program to Decrease Obesity in the Mental Retarded Adult Population. Because what happened, I could tell that throughout these people's lives, once they got, 30, 40 years old, they were just hugely obese. And it was because they were sitting around. Nobody had ever, taught them anything other than feed yourself 3 times a day or 4 times a day. And even what you're choosing to eat was more like cookies and crackers and whatever, and not understanding, you need to eat a banana and an apple and why you need to do it. So when I started working on that, I looked at diet, changing the diet, making them understand the importance of choosing the right kinds of things to eat, going out into our cracker and Coke stands and putting in things like Gatorade and other kinds of good things instead of, Cracker Jacks and whatever for opportunities to get away from all that sugary stuff and have more natural kinds of things. And then as a part of that, I put them in the presidential sports program where they had to walk so many miles over a certain period of time at a certain rate of speed to reach and receive a presidential really award from the president. During that time, it was George Bush, and so they met the presidential challenge. All of the people that were in my major applied research project really met the challenge. They all got, certificates as a part of my dissertation and my applied research project. So what I think that the advisory board was looking at is that if we can start children that are handicapped in some form or fashion at an early age to see that they have certain skills and you can work with those skills, then when they get older, they will be able to physically hold out and to do better
Hold
at
on,
a lot of
Dr. Faye.
things.
Hold on, we'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second half of the show. Speaking with my good friend Dr. Joye Pugh, and she's telling us about the stories that are part of one of her newest books, Special Parables of Joy. And for those of you that are familiar with my work or are familiar with my story, you know that I also have a disability and I use a wheelchair, and that I've experienced the kind of things that Dr. Joy is speaking about, and have had to, overcome situations, and also have dealt with obstacles in my life, and have had to really encourage myself to not really, give up on stuff, but to use what time and what abilities, what capacity I have to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve as goal and dream and vision. And it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. I think that all of us are challenged in some way, and that we have to kind of overcome our mindsets, and whether it's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, that a lot of people are contending, especially in this day and age. There's a lot of depression, a lot of, as far as people that are being treated pharmaceuticals, and that have been vaccine damaged, and especially amongst our soldiers with the post-traumatic stress disorder. They say, the emergency workers, that they've never experienced the level of suicide that is happening in the world in this day and age. And so I think that, stories of overcoming and achieving in the face of limitation, things like that are important in the world, and that we need, I wish the mainstream media would focus more on those kind of things and share those kind of stories, rather than always bringing forth the negativity and as far as the bad side, the evil side of human nature. And so I think that books like what you brought forth, Dr. Joy, are going to bless a lot of people, and that I wish there was more of that in the world today.
Well, that's the thing that just really, I'm like you. We always focus on all the bad stuff, and we never look for the miracles that are happening all around us for people who have really achieved things that never were ever thought possible. And that's what I say. I feel like my stories here, these parables, really give you some hope if you're having any kind of issues, like you just mentioned, whatever it is. It gives you that understanding that you have something within you that can really take you higher. And Scripture has told us all along, if we put our faith in whatever that we believe in God that we can do, that nothing is impossible. If we have a faith of a mustard seed, we should be able to move a mountain. Mm-hmm. And we also know that when Peter was looking out at Jesus walking on the water, and he said about going out there with him, Jesus didn't tell him, no, you can't do that. He didn't say stay in the boat. And so when Peter got on, he was walking on the water. We're talking about a human being literally walking on the water. And until he took his eyes off of Jesus, then he started to sink. But that's where I think that we can understand from Scripture that we have a lot of capability, but we don't apply it. And we've never had anybody truly teach us and make us believe in these things that you can do it, because we're always told, oh, well, you can never walk on water. Why would you try that? What if we had been told you could walk on water? Just keep trying it, because you're going to do it one day. Mm-hmm. Who knows? If you kept believing that, could you do it? According to Scripture, you should be able to. You should be able to move a mountain with just a minute bit of faith that we don't have enough of. And when you talk about a mustard seed, it's the smallest seed that's out there. And it's telling you if you just had that much, you can move a mountain. So, that was how I wanted to approach working with handicapped people. And I saw it really work. And in so many things, it made me see that I could do a lot better in my own life and achieve a lot higher if I applied myself. And so I want to read a couple of excerpts from the book just to give you kind of a feel about these stories. And I'd like to start with Charles, the chapter on Charles, the spirit of Special Olympics, and just read a couple little paragraphs just to give you an idea of what he was like and what I was dealing with.
Yes, please.
Okay, and it's all written in first person. Okay, I
All
stood
right.
looking at the little boy crouched in the corner with his head almost tucked, hidden between his knees. Who is that young man? I asked my human services technician, hoping she would enlighten me. She replied, his name is Charles. I walked over to him, and leaning down, I tapped him on his head, hoping he would look up. He did not respond, but kept silent in the same withdrawn position. My hand reached for his little shoulder as I observed his twisted legs on which he was propped. Charles, I said in a very loving and reassuring tone. Slowly he began to raise his head, and as he looked up, I saw a sweet, innocent smile start to gleam across his face. Then, out of fear, he immediately retreated back to his closed form as if protecting himself from the outside world. For several minutes I worked to get his attention and to ensure him that I was indeed not a threat. Before long, Charles and I were looking at each other as I encouraged him to stand up. He acted embarrassed and wanted to withdraw from having eye contact with me. His cerebral palsy had maimed his legs, and he was overly self-conscious about their deformed nature. I asked him in a gentle voice, could he try to walk for me? It quickly appeared to be something of a major chore for him as he struggled to move across the floor. In my mind, I wanted to change his handicap, to reach out and make his legs new. I could see the spirit of human beauty being crushed inside a broken body, and tears came flooding into my eyes. Being a perfectionist, I wanted to make all things new. I had been trained as a physical education major to review the whole person: sound, mind, sound, body. I could see Charles had acquired his diagnosis of being developmentally delayed, mostly due to his physical disability, which had destroyed his concept of having a sound mind and a sound body. It was evident to me that inside he was screaming, "Someone get me out of this body. I am a human being. I want to be like others. Please help me." I could literally feel his pain of being trapped, and I knew I had to do something to help him. And that's how that story starts. And what this young man was able to eventually do was go from developmentally playing basketball, not being able to shoot a ball, hardly throw a ball against a wall, much less dribble a ball, to literally playing on the top level of a basketball team in a few years, where he played with half the team of a normal status and him with 4 of his other outstanding athletes that I coached, winning the state championship in the highest level of Special Olympics at the state level.
Awesome.
And him being able to dunk a basketball.
Wow, that's cool.
So I am going to tell you that young man went on to become one of Georgia's Special Olympics highlighted athletes, as Special Olympian in the state of Georgia of the year. And he literally became one of my most outstanding athletes. Even though his legs were like they were, his arms, he became just a phenomenal young man to work with, and to this day has moved on and is a dietitian and does all kinds of great. He cooks and he does great things. He has a home and children and a family, and he has made it. But to think that he first started out sitting in a corner with people telling him nothing possible was for him. And I remember encountering a lady that was very much into the Special ed programs in the school systems, and she came to me after he got to this level that nobody believed he could do, and she told me, she says, of all the years that I've worked in physical education with all types of children, she says, I have never, ever, and would I have ever dreamed that young man could have become what he became. And she literally knew it was because I literally said to him, I believe in you. And he used to look at me and say, well, Miss Joy, they're going to laugh at my legs. And I remember telling him, I said, get out there on that because he plays soccer for me too. And I said, get out there at soccer field. And I said, if somebody says something about your legs, I'm going to take care of them, but you play ball for me. And he had that desire and that capability literally to not give up. So this is the kind of stories that we're talking about. The people were really broken and not able to do things. In Benji, the story on Benji, you find that he had also the cerebral palsy and autism and some other things, but he got so good at running that he ended up running in the United States of America, the Marine Corps mini marathon that was hosted in Washington, D.C., that Oprah Winfrey was a part of. And so he was able to, he always wanted to fly on an airplane. The money was raised, and we got out and we raised the money to make that happen. And he was chosen out of all these athletes to get to go to Washington, D.C. and run this mini marathon for the Marine Corps. And the opportunity for him to be able to fly. And of course, when he got on the plane, the pilots there at Delta, they allowed him to go back in the day into the cockpit and have his picture made sitting at the control panel. I mean, something that this young man had dreamed all of his life and never thought that he would ever get the chance to see those things. But it was because he pushed himself. Started off, he'd try to run and he would fall down, just boom, boom, boom. And I'd be picking him up and he'd fall down, and pick him up, fall down. And he really inspired me so much that I had used to run marathons and things when I was younger and messed up both of my knees really bad as I got older. But he inspired me to run with him. And I began training a little bit with him and ended up running in a race with him for a 5K road race and actually won a trophy in my age division. So his inspiration brought me back to the table going, if he can do this, Joy, why aren't you out there doing this? And that inspiration really was amazing. And like I say, he went on to do things that was just unreal that nobody never believed he could do. So I want to read kind of a part of that on Benji. In Benji's case, he literally did fly higher than he had ever dreamed he would get the chance in his lifetime to do. Although in the back of my mind, I somehow believe Benji, through the power of his unique internalization skills, had decided if he was ever given the chance to fly, that he would. He finally encountered and harnessed his greatest asset, his faith. With it, he made his body believe it would and could mechanically perform to the level that his mind had only dreamed of. Like a pinwheel in the wind, even with its arms bent out, strangely it spins around in perfect motion. Likewise, Benji's bent legs also became faster and faster when his internal spirit of faith began blowing a harmonious wind through his very being, thereby propelling him forward. This revelation occurred because of one small but very powerful thing. Benji believed, just like the mechanical design of the pinwheel, that he too could run like the wind, and he did.
Awesome.
So those are the kinds of things that really make you see how people really transcended anything that anybody ever believed they could do. And one of the most touching things that I talk about in the book is about a young man that has Down syndrome and that I fully believe was meant to be a pastor on this earth. And literally at his church, he goes to the altar every time they have the call at the end of the service. Now, some people wanted to laugh about that. And I thought to myself, if everybody went to God's altar every Sunday before leaving church, what our world would be like if they followed in that young man's example. And so I wanted to read a little bit about this because my father had passed and everybody else that was normal didn't know what to say. But with him, he was able to do some things for me in a prayer that I will never, ever forget. But I want to start and I want to read this a little bit. Whenever Billy prayed, I had always been touched by his words. In his own simple way, Billy's words seemed to be speaking to my soul. Even though his words would sometimes run together due to the lack of his teeth, I would deeply concentrate on listening and trying to understand what he was saying. I always paid close attention. Billy had his own special delivery of prayer. If you really listened to his words, you could not help but be blessed. Oftentimes, people would tell Billy to keep it short, but Billy was not like the younger generation. Instead, he was just like those old-time saints of God who could pray and pray and pray for what seemed like eternity. When he neared the end of his prayers, he would do so by thanking God. He would ask God to bless those who were looking after him, as well as those looking after his friends and his fellow clients. Now here Billy was on his bended knee, waiting patiently for me to bow my head. I sat there for a few seconds, staring into Billy's innocent eyes and the angelic glory that shone in his face, which transcended the unique characteristics of one born with Down syndrome. At that moment, his earthly physical characteristics seemed to be removed, like a veil before my eyes. For the first time, I saw my true brother in Jesus Christ, wanting me to join him in a mighty word of prayer. This moment of transformation was deeply serene. It was a moment in time when the limitations of this world were supernaturally removed. And I'm going to tell you that the rest of that story, I'm not going to be able to read it because I will cry. It literally showed me that everybody has a purpose here. So if you're listening out there and you have a child, a family member that is handicapped in any form or fashion, do not feel like God put a bad curse on your life. Look at what they are bringing to the table each day as a part of what God has them do in your own life. So many times we're so busy complaining that we don't see the golden nuggets that are laying all around us and appreciate what people are bringing to the table. I'm going to tell you that every day for 13 years that I went to my job, the happiest moments were with the people I was working with that were handicapped. My biggest problem was with staff and politics on the outside of the facility trying to do those wonderful people in. And I'm going to tell you, people used to say, Joy, I don't know how you do that. I feel so sorry. You've got to go work with those people. I'm like, those people make me be more of what God wants me to be than any other person people I've ever run into. They love Jesus. They work hard. They are dedicated to get better. They don't hurt. They don't gossip. They don't try to do things to people. They're not doing evil. I said they are some of the most perfect people that God ever created for the face of this earth. And if you go back, Zen, and you look into history, for example, the Mayans, when they had a handicapped child be born, it was a uniqueness, and they believed that person was godlike. And so they lifted those people up as the echelon of society because of their uniqueness. But unfortunately, in our society, they've been pushed aside. They've been put to the sidelines of life. And I tell you, that was my intent, was to step in and say, enough is enough. These people have a right to be here. God created them in his image. They are created in God's image. We are God's children. We are here to look after our brother. And to me, those people they would care more about their brother than I've ever seen I keep saying what we call normal, because I think normal sometimes is kind of funny thing to be calling people because nobody's normal. But the bell curve, the normal part, I saw so many times in Special Olympics, people would be trained as great athletes. And if one of their competitors fell down, I have seen people who were winning the race turn around, stop, and go back and pick up one of their fellow competitors. You very rarely ever see that ever occur in the competition with so-called normal people. They literally have compassion beyond compassion. And I really wanted a book that really exemplified that and taught that in such a way that people could get a blessing out of it and really see. I mean, I find myself so many times not doing all that I know that God has given me the capability and talent to do. One reason is laziness. One reason I don't feel good. Or so-and-so doesn't think I can do it. Or that's going to cause me to have to do this. Or I'm going to have to make somebody a little mad or whatever. Or so-and-so is so jealous of me and I just don't want to deal with that jealousy. I mean, we limit ourselves by what we hear and we think and then internally what we feel with our physical capability. But we have talents that far exceed anything anybody could even imagine. And that's why I'm so wanting to make people really understand that limitation that we've placed on not only handicapped people, but on ourselves have kept us from reaching our potential here. Right. I mean, literally reaching our potential. And so those are the reasons that those parables are so important to me. And I'm so excited to have this book out. And I just feel like it was such an opportunity that I thank you for the opportunity to do this and to talk about this, Zen, because it is very part of my life. And like I say, the people that I saw, I had a Down syndrome that could play the piano like Jerry Lee Lewis and literally could not say 3 sentences. I'm my mama's baby was one of them, and very limited. I want a Coca-Cola. But you could say, hey, go over there and sit down at that piano. And he could rock that piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. And so when you see that the brain has so many capabilities that we are limiting people. What if somebody had taken him at an early age, because he was already about 50 or 60 when I started working with him, and had taken that talent? What kind of capability did he have that somebody missed because he was Down syndrome? He literally had a talent that maybe could have far exceeded Mozart or somebody that that had ability to play whatever on a piano. It's that we are limiting people and not realizing potential. And it's a shame that sometimes psychological tests, behavioral tests, physical assessment tests are so standardized that you lose the individual person. And you forget about the spirit of what God told us lives in us. You have the faith of the mustard seed. You can do this and this and this and this. I had the privilege of actually meeting a pastor one time. I believe he was from Jacksonville, Florida, who literally had been diagnosed as a mental retarded individual all his life. And his mother kept praying for his deliverance from mental retardation. And he was delivered from that and he ended up getting his doctorate and becoming a pastor. I wish I could remember the young man's name, but it just goes to show you that when God is in the mix, the sky is the limit.
Right.
That you just don't give up. I was telling somebody one day about playing music, and that I play a lot of musical instruments, but my mother wanted me to play piano. Prime example. And she wanted me to play like Bach and Beethoven. And so I took 6 years of classical music, and I hated every day that I had to practice. I wanted to sit down and play the piano and sing Romeo and Juliet and pop music. And instead, I was having to read all these notes, and my fingers were going 100 miles an hour, and it would give me a headache, and I'd get dizzy, and I was just like, I hate this, and I really did not learn to play anything because I was so busy trying to look at notes, and I wanted to go play the guitar and play the drums and whatever, because it was like I didn't have to focus on that. And so one day, after I gave up playing the piano and could play about 4 pieces halfway decent, I was in a guitar store, a piano store, music store, And this man came up to me, he showed me this clavinova, and he says, this is a new thing in pianos. And he says, don't you play piano? And I said, oh, don't even go there. I'm terrible, and I took 6 years. Whatever. And he says, well, Joy, don't you play chords on a guitar? And I said, yes. And he said, hey, look at this. He says, all you got to do is memorize the chords, and this is how you play. You know the notes. And I'm like, oh, you can do that? He said, you mean you took 6 years and nobody ever showed you chords? And I said, no, they were too busy trying to teach me classical music. And, he says, if you memorize these chords, now today, learning to play the piano that way, I can play any piece of music that's put in front of me. But it was because it was a different way to learn it. So I was mentally incapable of learning it that way. Right. If I had not had somebody show me how to do it another way, then I would have never been able to have an album before time stops, write my own music, play the piano, and play the music for my churches.
Awesome. All right, hold on, Dr. Joy. Be right back for final segment, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I find in the world that most people sabotage themselves before they ever put forth the effort to try, simply because they don't believe that they can succeed in whatever it is that they might do. Like a lot of people say, "Oh well, I don't have that skill, or I can't do that, or I can't be an artist, or I can't be a painter, whatever it is." I find that in simply just doing, you learn, and that the more persistent and the more focus and the more that time passes, the greater your skill set develops with whatever it is that you are spending your time learning. And that if people have that kind of mindset over time and space, they will eventually master whatever it is that they are putting their focus on and whatever it is that they are trying to achieve in skill set. And that a person that has that kind of mindset and that has a willingness to try and to really put their focus in the moment in when they are doing something, that really they can master anything, simply because again, they have the confidence in themselves to learn something, and that they will then learn something very quickly. And like even the Renaissance people that performed and did all kind of different arts, and and even were well versed in study of even the maths and sciences and all of those different kinds of things. They never limit themselves in scope or in mindset. And yet in this culture, in this day and age, it seems like so many people in already in their mind, they are again limiting themselves, and they don't believe that they can succeed, and then they don't even try. And that's a very sad thing. And I think that's why a lot of people get stuck in jobs that they don't enjoy, get stuck in career paths and things that don't bring them joy in their lives, and they don't chase their passions. They don't even entertain the possibility that, hey, if I just do something that I love, and hopefully over time, I could maybe, make a career out of whatever that passion, whatever that love is. And then if you have a job that you're doing that you love, well, that makes a whole different, as far as outlook and the way that a person goes through their day. It's a whole different kind of thing. And it's unfortunate that more people don't, believe in themselves. And so I think we need more of that in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you totally. It's how you look at what is it that you feel like God has given you the opportunity to do.
Right.
And then, like I was mentioning about me playing the piano, if I had just given up, then the opportunities that had been given to me because of, and I had to practice. It wasn't like it wasn't
Right.
just laid out. I mean, people who have
Right.
the talent to just go do it is one thing, but I saw that I could learn to do this, but I had to work at it every day,
Yeah.
every day, and get better and better at the skill and stay with it and repetitiously keep doing it to the point that I could do what I really wanted to do. It wasn't just handed to me. And I know that there are some talents that people have that they're just naturally born with that
Mhm.
natural talent, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. But even if you have natural talent, if you don't build on it, if you don't perfect it, if you don't take it to the next level, then you're really not reaching your full potential. And that was the thing, is that I wanted everybody that I worked with to try to find what it was that they could do and do well, and then really reach their potential in doing it and doing it well. One of the stories that I talk about is about Johnny completely blind. When he was born premature. They put him in an incubator and they turned up too much oxygen, and it literally blew his eyes up.
Oh,
And so he was
gosh.
born with no ability to see. And the story is quite amazing. I don't want to, tell all of it, but it's just the fact that he had this insight into things that he can't see that was absolutely amazing. And in Special Olympics, I taught him to stand at a free throw line and strip the net with a basketball. And at the state championship,
Wow.
it was down at it was up at the University of Georgia, there in their gymnasium where we were having our state Special Olympics. He stood there and stripped the net, and people could not believe that boy standing down there was literally totally blind, and he stood there and put that ball right through that net without seeing anything. He's never seen a basketball goal. He'd never seen a basketball net. He'd never seen a basketball. And literally just the skill of standing there and being positioned and told to shoot that ball, that it would go through the net. It was amazing what I saw people be able to do that nobody would have believed it. And you talk about people that were in that gym that day that saw that happen were just, standing on their feet clapping, because it's just, you go out and try to shoot a basketball with your eyes closed, and you've seen it. You've seen a basketball, and you know what a basketball feels like, and you know how far the goal is. But imagine closing your eyes and attempting that and being able to consistently do that when somebody puts you in position, and you could just sit there and pop that ball back on your shoulder and then push it forward and it go through there every time. It just is amazing what skills we really have if we work on it. And I'm thinking to myself, every NBA basketball player that misses a free throw needed to take some lessons from him. They had not perfected their skill, or they could literally have stood there with their eyes closed and stripped the net. It's amazing what I saw the human body able to do during this 13 years that I worked with those people. And I really want to take a moment to really say thank you to a man that really helped me raise the money, because none of this was paid for. Everything, when you go outside of doing just work activities and outreach and residential programming and whatever, those things are funded by the government, through the Department of Human Resources. But anytime you do anything like I was doing on the outside and bringing these people into a whole new program, everything had to be funded. And so there was a man that I asked to come to a Sweet Potato Festival, because I took over the Georgia Sweet Potato Festival to raise money to do the things that I was needing to do. And I asked Joseph Mascola, who was playing Stefano DiMero on Days of Our Lives. My accountant and I worked just day and night trying to get a hold of him after my husband Mel had seen where he had been at an event up north. Mel had to do some traveling with his job, and he was coming down through Virginia, I believe it was, and he saw at a mall that Stefano DiMero, Days of Our Lives, was making a personal appearance there. And I had been trying to get people to come to the Sweet Potato Festival to raise money and do what I needed. And then, like I say, to Little Red Light Town, I needed a bunch of people to raise money to do the kind of things that I'm telling you that I was able to do with these people, and to travel and get them to where they needed to go and train. And so we began working with NBC, and finally got a hold of the guy that was his agent, and gave him a proposal. And one day, unbeknownst to me, my secretary called me. I was in the workshop area and said that I had an important telephone call. And I came in there and I said, and who is it? And she says, well, I don't know. His name is Joseph Mascola. He says he's got to talk to you. And I was like, you got Stefano DiMero on the line. I thought my secretary was going to fall out of the chair. Well, by the time I got to the phone, I was literally shaking, because, I'm fixing to ask a man to travel across the United States to a little town with two red lights to help me raise some money for a Special Olympic program and build some home places for these people to live through HUD. And I got on the telephone and explained to him exactly what I was trying to do. And lo and behold, he says, if you'll put it out in writing and submit it to my agent, we'll take a careful look at it. Well, I thought, thank you very much. That'll be the end of that, like it had been for about every other 200 people that I tried to get a hold of. And I won't tell you, Zen, when I put that thing together, I really prayed over it as hard as I could. And I was knowing that he was on NBC, and probably everybody in this little South Georgia town, that was about the only station we had growing up. So everybody knew, Days of Our Lives and knew who he was. And I'm thinking he'll draw a lot of people from me for this area. But Lord, you got to really intervene. And he did. And would you believe within about a week, I got a call back from him, and he said, yes, I will come and I will be a part of the, everything there and help raise some money. And he continued to come and help me raise money. We did a couple more festivals, and then we did some celebrity events, and he brought a lot of his celebrity friends off of a lot of the TV and movies that came here and into this little town where I was at, and helped us really do some fundraisers that really provided everything financially that I needed for those people that I was working with. And so that tribute to him is A Sweet Tater Blessing is the name of the story that's there. He has now since passed. He did die, and he has been. He was one of probably the best, what I call villains ever on TV or in the movies. But he was a wonderful person. He was very talented. He went to the Juilliard School of Music. He could sing. He could dance. He did a lot of things that, sometimes Stefano was playing chess, and he had that Italian capability of speaking that was just unreal. His voice, his voiceovers, he won a lot of Emmys. He was a wonderful person. And what he did to help me raise the money, the Georgia Assembly, the Senate and the House Representative did honor him with a Mascola proclamation day there in Atlanta, Georgia, for the work that he came. I had asked one of my people that was the councilman about the recognition, and we got the recognition from the governor and that kind of thing for him. And it meant the world to him for that to happen. But he really literally came and did something for a little small South Georgia town with a lot of his friends that were on Days of Our Lives and other soap stars, as well as movie stars, several athletes that came with him that had been in the regular Olympics, and made a whole difference for what I was able to do for those people there that I was working for. So, like I say, there is a really sweet story about him and the work that he did. And then, of course, the fight that I had with my own community, politics, jealousy, the things that went on with that is also included in that, which really will make you get cringe to know that people can be so mean when somebody's trying to do something so good and willing to fly across the United States to help you out. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the war between the politics of good and evil, and Public Law 94-142 is something that a lot of people didn't realize that was out there. But every child has a right to a free public education. I mean, regardless of their race, handicap, creed, religious background, whatever, they are to be given the right opportunities to be mainstreamed. Because in mainstreaming these people in and giving them opportunities that are more normal, you can get their disabilities not to be so severe. But that keeping them on the sidelines of life has been the wrong thing to do. And like I say, in those stories that are in the book as well, you're going to see that the politics behind all of this was a terrible thing. And I'll be honest with you, I almost lost my life. I was literally shot at. And the thing is, God protected me and got me through it. But the people that I was able to help make a difference in their life, it made a complete difference in their lives. And there are 2 projects that are built there, Irwin County Resources and Camelot Court, that give people a chance to live in their home and hometown and not be sent off to some institution somewhere where they don't know anybody. So, while it had to suffer a little bit, and thank goodness it didn't cost me my life, I really did feel like my life was very much in jeopardy, and I was very afraid at one time that my life was in jeopardy. But standing up for what's right, in the end, you never have any regrets. All the pain, all the tears, all the sweat, and all the happiness. It was worth every bit of ounce of energy that I put forth. And it was wonderful. And I'm so thankful because I want to say that the book, I dedicated it to the Special Olympic program athletes and all the coaches that are both living and now deceased, because they did believe in the Special Olympic oath, which is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And that's one thing I can tell you, that all of my athletes were brave in their attempt, far braver than if I had a regular, normal, so-called team, would have never given me the dedication and the outpouring of bravery that those particular people did. And then I wanted to say that I also put in loving memory, and I wanted to say about that because Mel was a wonderful husband that has now passed because of his death due to the vaccination of a flu shot, many years of him deteriorating. Mm-hmm. But he supported me 110%. He coached athletes. He went with me. He stood by me. He saw me go through, and how he held his tongue and did not retaliate in some situations. He was a genuine, wonderful man to have to put up with some of the stuff that he had to put up with that was done at me and my family for what I was trying to do for right. And he supported me in my efforts, whatever it took to find somebody, try to find athletic equipment, or to go and help me train, or sit out in a hot car all day for me to be out on a soccer field at a Special Olympics state event, and him not feeling good so that I could coach my team. I mean, I can never say thank you enough to him for what hours and time and dedication that he gave to me, support. Because without that, Zen, I could not have done what I did, because it was that difficult and it was that hard. And so I wanted to say thank you to him. And I also mentioned Stefano DiMera, who was Joseph Mascola, is his real name, from Days of Our Lives. I also mentioned Senator Rooney Bowen. Rooney Bowen was one of the best senators I could have ever asked to have had help me in getting the money that I needed from the government, and walking things through the General Assemblies with me to try to pass legislation to help my people. Representative Paul Branch, and all these people are now deceased. He was from Fitzgerald. He was a wonderful representative and helped me in so many ways. The county commissioner at the time, the chairman, was Winston Tucker. He used to call me Joan of Arc, and he meant the world to me. He was a board member and supported me 100%. The recreation chairman, Kermit Elliott, he's also deceased, was a wonderful supporter of everything that I tried to do, and was there, and his wife both were very staunch supporters, and just would try to help me promote and do for Irwin County and for my athletes. Businessman Elijah Waldron gave me many, many dollars to help me get off and get running in certain areas, and never wanted a pat on the back at all. But Elijah Waldron he's deceased now, but a wonderful man. Michael Jackson, who was the big guy over and developed Verlin Enterprises, and the guy that he worked with and invented the teardrop putter. And they worked with my golf program and gave me so much to make my golf program perfect. He's passed, and I just appreciated him. And Mr. Tom Clayton, who played Santa Claus for my group every year and was involved with Social Security Administration. And he was one of the best businessmen and one of the sweetest guys that I've ever met, because if I believe that there was a Santa Claus out there, it was Mr. Tom, and that spirit lived within him. So, those people that stood behind me, the board members that I had, the Special Olympic coaches, and they're too many to name, that were there and supported and helped and participated in the events and the fundraisers. If you hear this, know that if I didn't mention your name tonight, there were so many that I would be afraid to even start, because I would leave out somebody. But thank you for everyone who stood beside me during a very difficult time to try to bring handicapped people into the forefront of recognizing that they have a right to be here, and that they are our brothers and sisters, and that they are in God's image, and that we should all love each other like they love and worship God. Because if we would do like they do, our world would be a lot better off. And I am so thankful that God sent me to that place to apply for that job and allowed me to stay about 13 years, because it was some of the most wonderful years of my life. And I tried to make that really known in this book, Parables of Joy, Special Parables of Joy, Triumphs of the Disabled. Because if I wrote the parables in first person, and I wanted you to be able to read it just like I was sitting here talking to you about it. And I said at the end, in the author's note that I made here, I said I was led by God to follow my heart into the employment of rescuing those less fortunate from a system that had locked them into a belief of failure. Inadvertently, I also became battered, bruised, and broken by elite members of my own community in order to help the mentally and physically handicapped comprehend that a spirit of true attainment lived within them, which was not bound by the physical world. I knew if my athletes would only believe that the possibility existed for achievement, then their rewards would become endless by grasping that simple belief. And I said, once you walk with me across these next pages of history, you will never again view the plight of the handicapped in the same way. For me, you too will be touched and forever changed by the unlimited power of a hidden spirit that exists and lives inside all of mankind. We are all made in our Creator's image. We all have a planned purpose as His beloved children within His marvelous creation.
Awesome. That is a great way to end this show, Dr. Joy. We've got just about 3 minutes remaining, and so I want to give you a chance for final comment, and just let everybody know again your website and contact information. And also you can find all of Dr. Joy's books at sacredwordpublishing.com. Dr. Joy.
Yes, like I say, my website is www.drjoye, that's joy with an e.com. And my Facebook page is JoyePugh, P as in Paul, UGH. And I would love to have you friend me and be a Facebook friend and keep up with me and what I'm doing. And like Zen says, all my books are available at Sacred Word Publishing. And if you go to my website, there are links that you all you have to do is click on, and it'll take you right over there, and they will make sure that you get your book and hopefully books. And like I say, the books that I have are all, they're all nonfiction. So they're they're real stories of real people. And I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me, Zen, to talk about this book tonight, because it is very dear and very close to my heart.
It's my great honor, Dr. Joy. And also, do you want to share a little bit about what will be your latest release, The Colors of Joy, when we have it finished and completed? But can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, the latest book that will be coming out will be Colors of Joy 2. When I was in high school, I released Colors of Joy. It was a poetry book, and I had always wanted to follow up that series. And so thank goodness that has become a reality. So my new book that will be coming out, or that's available, I think right now, that as we speak on the website,
awesome.
is
great.
Colors of Joy 2, and it's poetry, prose, and spiritual awakening. And what I tell you is that I take you on a journey of where I felt empty, unloved, insecure, and lost. And while walking this path of perceived loneliness, I found stepping stones into a spiritual realm where I discovered that God had been with me all the time. And I used my own life experiences reflected in poetry and prose to teach you that we are never alone. So that book is available, and it's called Colors of Joy 2. And the reason it's Colors of Joy 2 is because my first poetry book was Colors of Joy, and it's a limited edition and no longer available. But I'm so tickled to have this out because it's a unique way of reading. One of my favorite people when I was growing up was a poet by the name of Rod McEwen. And I always wanted to do a poetry prose book, much like he did one time when I was young, and I just really liked the way he did his poetry. So this poetry prose, it's very, very awakening. You will, as you read through it, you're going to experience some awakening in reading it the way that I've asked you to read it when you read it, and hopefully it will open a pathway for you to worship on a daily basis with our Lord Jesus Christ and the Creator God who loves us, and allow your spirit to feel that perfect feeling of us being part of what this creation was all about, to be His children.
Reminds me of footprints in the sand. Thank you, Dr. Joy.
Thank you too, Zen. I love you. Thank you again.
Love you as well. God bless all. Good night.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.